We have Sai Varanasi, and Sai is an alumna from Region 3B for North Carolina Science and Engineering Fair. She's enrolled at Georgia Tech with a major in mechanical engineering, and works in a lab using thermodynamics to study electrochemical systems. The focus of these systems is sustainability. One example of the work they do is looking at membranes in a system to create fertilizers in a cleaner way. Some of their work focuses on negative carbon emissions, which ties to her passion using the properties of physics to have a positive impact on the environment. The lab that she works in does actually bring together her interest in engineering and sustainable, cleaner world. And so with that, Sai's going to talk to us about coming together to create a cleaner world.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thanks everyone for being here. So to start off, I want to pose a few questions for you. So what if we could live in a world where we could go outside in a city anywhere in the world and not have to worry about pollution at all? You could just go and you wouldn't see smog and it would all be fine. You could live in a world where you wouldn't have to worry about the increasing occurrence of natural disasters, and you could go to the beach without worrying that it'll all be underwater in 50 years. And thinking about some of these questions is really what sparked my interest in sustainability, since I was in middle school. So in 7th grade, as part of a class project, we had to take a carbon footprint test. And for this carbon footprint test, I took it and I kind of evaluated all of the different choices that I make on a daily basis. And for me, I thought I was always making clean choices in life. So I was using energy efficient appliances, my family compost, we're vegetarian. So generally, I always had thought, okay, I'm making clean choices. So that's kind of all you can do. And that's good enough. But that test was really eye-opening because number one, I saw how many tons per year of carbon dioxide I personally was emitting. And I was like, well, that's just me. Everyone else is also in the world doing the exact same thing. And then another thing that was a really eye-opening metric was they had a metric that was if every person in the world lived like you, it would take this many Earths to be able to sustainably create those resources. And that number was obviously greater than 1. So I think that was kind of the moment for me where I was like, okay, sustainability is really important. And that's kind of something that I wanted to learn more about. So I started just looking up different things about sustainability, such as renewable energy, fossil fuels, and how they're hurting our environment, what the climate's going to look like in 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, and all kinds of questions like that. And those questions really got me interested in sustainability, and it made me want to take more classes related to that. Like climate change biology and environmental engineering. And some of those classes made me decide and solidified my passion for the environment and made me want to go into a career relating to the environment and a career in which I would be able to help make a difference for this really big problem. So therefore, when I went to college, I was like, okay, I'm going to be an environmental engineering major because I like engineering and it just kind of made sense because environmental is in the name. So I was like, okay, this is going to be the way that I would be able to best make an impact. And when I took this major, and I took a major related class my first semester called Introduction to Civil and Environmental Engineering. And in this class, we did some civil and some environmental engineering. And honestly, both of these topics that we were learning just weren't really interesting to me. For the civil side, it was more we were talking about buildings and roads, and that wasn't super interesting to me. Then on the environmental side, we were talking about a lot about pollution and about water, and those were also not necessarily I was interested in specifically. And a lot of the concepts that we were using were more chemistry focused. So at that point, I was like, okay, maybe I should change my major. And I went to the career fair, and I went to both an environmental engineering career fair and then also the regular career fair. And I was kind of just looking at different options and kind of seeing what types of jobs are out there. And I think that something that really stuck out to me was that environmental engineering specifically was a lot of water-based and water treatment stuff. And for me, that wasn't as interesting. But at that point, I was like, okay, I have all of these career goals of wanting to do something environmental related. But at the same time, like what I thought was environmental focused isn't exactly the right thing for me. So I decided to change my major to mechanical engineering because it's more focused in terms of like physics and being able to apply physics to different problems and being able to apply that like what you consider engineering typically. And I think that in doing that, I was very hesitant about it because I didn't know if there would be a path for me to be a mechanical engineering major and also be able to work on something long-term that would be beneficial to sustainability. Because a lot of times when we look at mechanical engineering, especially when you go to a career fair or something, there are a lot of jobs in like natural gas and oil and things like that. So at that point, I was kind of like unsure if this is maybe the right path, but I was very interested in all the classes and everything. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So then I started looking for labs at Georgia Tech and different types of research that is related to the environment. And some of the labs that I was looking at were one where they did physics modeling of glacier ice melting, and they kind of did like a lot of coding related to that. There's another lab that was looking at systems of batteries and how you could like improve those with various systems they're using. And then there's the lab that I ended up joining called the Water Lab at Georgia Tech. And that lab, one of the things that we do is doing clean energy or clean methods to produce ammonia for fertilizers. And that's kind of like all of those three different sections, like topics for those three labs that I was looking at really made me see that there's so many different aspects to sustainability. It's not just kind of like what you think about when you're like, okay, this is environmental science or this is environmental engineering, that really like there's so many different topics and fields that can relate to sustainability. And this kind of got me thinking about other types of career paths that are related to the environment and sustainability. And I've kind of seen this through various classes that I've taken, including humanities classes at Georgia Tech. So I think that some like there's like you could do like environmental law, you could do writing about the environment and kind of like journalism, those types of things. There's economics. And I took a class where the person teaching the class was like doing a PhD in environmental economics. So a lot of the examples we were looking at in that class were related to carbon taxes and things like that. I'm taking a class currently called Global Development, and we talked about developing different countries and how they can develop in more sustainable ways and how we can kind of work towards that goal. There's all types of mathematical modeling, computer science, chemistry, biology, physics, so many different ways that you can take whatever you're passionate about, whatever you're interested in, and apply that to the environment. And I think that this really got me thinking about how all of these different people can come together and create a holistic solution to a problem that's huge. And this is kind of similar to what Daniel was talking about, because you have all of these different people and they all have different skills, right? And you have like a physicist, you have a mathematician, a chemist, an engineer, and you have all of these different skills and they're all able to come together to create a very creative approach versus just someone who's looking at it from one angle or one side and doesn't have the full picture. If you just have an engineer or a scientist who's creating some type of new method for clean energy, that person doesn't have the skills in order to be able to apply that to what the real world looks like. They don't have the economic skills to be able to say, is this technology actually viable in our economy? They don't have the political skills maybe to navigate implementing these things through the government. And I think that having all of these different mindsets and all of these different ideas and approaches and putting them together is really what's going to help us solve some of the biggest problems in the world, one of them being climate change. And I think that just generally what you can do to kind of continue with this goal is taking whatever types of skills you have, whatever you actually enjoy doing on a day-to-day basis, and taking those and applying them to whatever passion and large goal you have in mind, and finding that creative way in order to do that. Because when you find that creative way and you don't just follow the path most taken, you end up with more skills and you end up with more creativity in order to solve these problems. And you think about it in a way that hasn't already been thought about before. And when you're able to implement this, you then can make a difference in the world's biggest problems.
All right, hooray. Thank you so much, Sai, for sharing your story and your passions. If you have specific questions for Sai, we welcome you to drop them into the chat and I will give them to her verbally. And Sai, I know that when you and I talked, well, people are thinking, talked about kind of the idea of your passion for these groups coming together and the importance of when we work globally, thinking about the capabilities of the countries that are doing it and what we're asking of them and what we ask of ourselves. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I know that's something I think I watched a Bill Gates talk on this, or one of the points that he brought up was this. And then we talked about it more in the global development class that I'm taking right now. So if we have all of these countries that are considered developed and they're all polluting the environment so much, right? And at the same time, we expect other countries that are maybe more developing, that are not causing this much pollution, to be developing in a very sustainable way. It's kind of unfair to those countries, and it kind of puts more strain on them if they're trying to use like solar energy, which is not as reliable as using just like coal and things like that. So I think that making sure that you have a fair and like equitable approach to this, and ensuring that because sustainability is not just about carbon and the carbon footprint, because you can't just have people who are unable to access resources that they need in order to do that. So yeah.
Great. And then we have a question. Do you have any tips for that? Like Daniel's relating to your, the journey of trying to find the major that fits your passions and your goals. Do you have any tips for people who are entering college soon, with many of which are on our
yeah, so I think that what I would say is talk to as many different people as you can. Something that really helped me was talking to a bunch of different people. And even if you don't agree with what they're saying, I think that that's really important to get all different perspectives, because especially I've had so many different conversations with people I completely agree with, people I completely disagree with, and them telling me what major I should be. And for me to at least understand the reasoning behind it and see, okay, like, do I agree with this? Do I disagree with this? That's one way to help. And another thing is just like, you can take classes, go to different research like fairs and like symposiums and things like that, because right now they're all virtual and usually open to people. Go to like as many different things that you can go to, various events and things, and like talk to upperclassmen, and that's very helpful. So just like learning as much as you can and kind of seeing where your interests align, and at the same time being okay and being open to change. And I think that was something that was a really big thing for me, is like when I had started my major, I was like, okay, I've already taken some of these classes, and now like I'm gonna have to, like, those classes aren't going to count towards anything, and like being okay with, okay, maybe I'm going to have to take like 3 more classes in the grand scheme of things and kind of have to squeeze those in, but at least I get to do something that I much more enjoy doing. So I think that was another thing, is just being open.